Some breaking news on the Defense Secretary. Over to Sandra for that.
Thanks, John. And I'm going to bring in the retired four-star General Jack Keane as we learn this news. We now know that U.S. Defense Secretary Austin did undergo a minimally invasive surgical procedure to treat and cure prostate cancer. This was at Walter Reed Medical Center. We are just starting to get these updates now. He was admitted to the hospital with complications from that procedure on January 1st. He was under general anesthesia during the initial procedure, which took place on December 22nd. So the procedure, December 22nd, he was admitted due to complications January 1st. He underwent surgery to treat prostate cancer, we are now learning, and also the post-operative symptoms he had included nausea as well as severe abdominal, hip, and leg pain. An initial evaluation revealed a urinary tract infection. These are just some of the details that we are getting right now. Let me continue to go through this as I bring in General Keane. General, I want to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, the story has been, we're thankful he's out of the ICU now with these complications that he had. Still in the hospital is the latest that we know. But it was the appearance of breach of protocol and lack of informing the White House that really bothered many on both sides of the aisle. I just want to get your thoughts as we learn more about his condition.
Well, I do think likely when we get into the details of what is the procedure, and certainly the White House, has to get into it, and I don't blame them for trying to figure out what the heck is going on here. Are there procedures being followed or not? But I think on the very first one, on the 22nd, I do believe if a principal cabinet officer or even principal general officers and key principals like that, if they're going to have surgery, certainly their bosses are going to know that. But in the case of the Secretary of Defense, I think the American people need to know that as well. I mean, I understand. I know Llyod Austin very well. I respect him. We're infantry paratroopers together for a number of years. But the reality is you give up a lot of your privacy when you become a public official. And the fact that it's elective, it's cancer, it's prostrate, the American people should know that. Obviously, his chain of command should know that. And I do think, on the evening of January 1st, I mean, there was obviously a complete failure and breakdown in reporting on that. Likely, one of the complications is the chief of staff, who would normally be the person doing the reporting, was sick herself. But certainly there's other staff that should be assuming those responsibilities, and they know that, and they got to fix it. But I do think the American people should have been advised of it as well, not just the appropriate people like the president, national security advisors, and all the joint chiefs, etc. Because this is a very senior public official who was in a hospital and in intensive care, following what was likely simple surgery in that sense, but now we have an added complication to it. So full disclosure should be made not only to the chain of command, but to the American people.
Yeah, and the White House just put out a statement that they are reviewing that chain of command and making sure everyone has their plan in place because, again, his chief of staff who had the flu, the reasoning was that we did not learn of Secretary Austin's the latest visit to the hospital because his chief of staff was ill. Just want to continue to update on what we're getting from this statement from Walter Reed Medical Center, that Secretary Austin does continue to make progress and they anticipate a full recovery, although this can be a slow process, they are warning. Just going through the timeline, because that has been where there's been a lot of confusion, General. He had a change in his laboratory evaluation. This was early December 2023, we are now learning, where they identified prostate cancer, which they determined required treatment. It was then December 22nd, after consultation with his medical team, that he was admitted to the hospital and underwent that minimally invasive surgical procedure to treat and cure prostate cancer. He was under general anesthesia during that time. They're clarifying that this most recent complication, he was not and never lost consciousness. His prostate cancer was detected early, and his prognosis is excellent, thankfully. On January 1st, it was then that he was admitted to Walter Reed with complications from that December 22nd procedure, including nausea and severe abdominal and hip and leg pain. On January 2nd, a day later, the decision was made to transfer him to the ICU for close monitoring and a higher level of care. General, I understand that I believe that your sort of take here is that maybe this has been blown up in a way that it didn't need to be. But there is protocol in place, obviously, that you're saying you wish was followed, and we should have been notified back in December that this was his diagnosis. But what is the risk to the president not knowing that he's hospitalized and that he's in the ICU?
Well, yeah, that's a serious breakdown. There's no doubt about it. And there are protocols and reporting processes in place, to ensure that something like that doesn't happen. I mean, it is quite routine that takes place with principals that their staff are reporting higher up to other staff and notifying appropriate people. I've been in this system myself with my own subordinates and also with my superiors doing this. It's rare that you would ever report it yourself unless you worked in physically in the same facility with your bosses or subordinates. Other than that, it's usually staff reporting to staff about it. I would receive disclosures to me and during, daily updates about subordinates who are going on leave, where ill at home, working in the hospital for a checkup and staying overnight for some reason, or surgery itself. But the reporting thing, I think they can fix quite easily. But I do believe that, listen, this is a snafu. Nothing bad came of this, thankfully, as a result of this mistake and snafu. And I understand the emotion around the event.
Yeah.
And I think the secretary himself, knowing him, accepts responsibility for this not going right. And I'm sure the staff feels the same way about it. They've caused an uproar in the nation about it, and it's embarrassing to have something like that. And I think they'll go about it, fixing it pretty quickly.
General, before I let you go, can I ask you, please, about these new concerns about a nuclear Iran? As we were just reporting, a UN agency reports Tehran has tripled its output of enriched uranium. What about this growing threat, should we know?
Well, certainly we've known that Iran is on a march to acquire a nuclear weapon, and they've gotten very close to it with the amount of centrifuges and highly enriched uranium that they have in their possession. I think they'll likely have been holding back from completing the process because they're still seeking removal of more sanctions, and this administration has been awfully kind to them over the last 3 years and have given them money that they had no business giving him to. And Iran, quite frankly, Sandra, right now is flush with money because we eased up on the sanctions dealing with their production of oil. The previous administration had shut them down pretty much, and they were back on their heels. And that is likely why they have not gone and completed this cycle. I suspect because they know full well, while the administration has been reluctant to impose tougher sanctions on them, they wouldn't have much choice. Given the fact that they have in their possession a nuclear weapon. Now, so our audience understands, rushing to develop a weapon is one thing. Being able to deliver a weapon is quite something else. And we would likely be months away from their capability to do that, according to open source reporting that we all have access to. So that is a factor in this equation. It's not something we have to react overnight to, in the sense that now they've got a nuclear weapon. The reality is we have got to reset our strategy dealing with Iran, Sandra. This administration has failed, I think, miserably to confront Iran. They've appeased them, and you can see what they're doing here. They are clearly trying to achieve their objectives in the Middle East, to dominate and control the Middle East and drive the United States out of it, and obviously protect their own regime. And they are accomplishing a lot of that as we speak. And the strategy for 3 years has not worked. And the nuclear part of it is partial to that. They would try to renew the nuclear deal, and that blew up in their face. We have got to get the right strategic strategy in place and make certain Iran knows that they're going to be confronted, that sanctions are going to be imposed on them, and we're going to isolate them with our allies and partners in the region. That is what the Arabs want. That is what Israel wants. And we have got to help lead that process in doing it.
General Keane, really great to get your thoughts and analysis on all of that. We thank you for your time today, sir. And that is a live shot at the Pentagon. That briefing is about to begin. We will go to that likely. This could come up as well as the condition of the Defense Secretary. General Keane, thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.